If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Warm and friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Houston Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Tristan Freeman, who does such tremendous work over at Buffs and Brackets. We're going to be joined by him to recap what we all saw from a wild weekend in college basketball. And we've got two pretty big marquee games, one out there in the ACC between Duke and Virginia Tech, one out there in the Big 12 between the Houston Cougars and the Texas Longhorns. We're going to talk about both. We're also going to be looking at the landscape of both of those conferences, taking a look at the tenor that we're seeing with the top SEC teams, take a little bit of a look at the Big 10 as well. So a little bit of an all-encompassing just recap chat there in segment number 2 with our good friend Tristan. Then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GN_1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Xavier should have been called Hickory on this day because they got absolutely smoked. 99-56 a final, and for UConn, they were leading in this game by 1 point, 38-7, with about 5+ minutes left in the first half. For Xavier, just Murphy's Law hit them, and they actually shot 6 of 18 from 3-point range, so they actually weren't terrible there. But for UConn, 17 of 29 from 3-point range. Tristan Newton, 22 points in 22 minutes. So Taylor Swift's song about I don't know about you, I'm feeling 22. Well, Tristan Newton, he was feeling 22 on this day. For UConn, they were able to do a nice job winning the turnover battle 14-10. They win the rebound battle as Alex Karaman, Donovan Clingan, they combined for 15 rebounds. Clingan, he was able to put up 18 points in 19 minutes. Just thorough domination here from UConn. Our DK Network write-up of the over in Purdue versus Rutgers unfortunately did not come through. Rutgers decided to score only 20 points in the first half. They picked it up in the second half a little bit too little too late. Still 13 games above 500, but I will look to do better because that was a bad call by me. And for Purdue, they get the win but no cover as 68-60 was the final in this one. This has still been a Purdue team that has been a very good cover team, 12-7-2 against the spread. And Rutgers, they're just a completely different animal at the rack. And for Purdue, they just weren't able to get it going from 3-point range. You had Braden Smith go 3 of 5 from 3-point range. Rest of the team, they go just 2 of 14 from distance. And for Giant of the Year, Zach Edey, 26 points, 12 rebounds. This was a Purdue team that actually lost the battle on the glass by a count of 36-32, and Purdue actually loses the turnover battle as well, 15-10. Flat out, Rutgers wasn't able to hit shots, so 37.5% from the floor is what they shot. Just 4 of 16 from 3-point range, as you had Andre Hyatt be able to supply 15 points to be able to keep the team lively, but the shot making for Rutgers, it was very much eluding them. For Florida Atlantic, they've only covered one game within the American, and they got another scare out of North Texas, 66-63. Florida Atlantic, they get it done, but they do not cover the number. As for North Texas, they go 8 of 20 from 3-point range. What really did in North Texas in this one is that they just weren't able to match up on the glass. Florida Atlantic wins that battle by a count of 38-31, and John L. Davis really did bail out Florida Atlantic in this 28 points, 8 boards. He chipped in there a pair of steals, so that was very rock solid. But you did have a pair of guys in C.J. Nolan, Jason Edwards, be able to supply North Texas with 30 points. A very sturdy North Texas team as well. Problem for North Texas was they went 3 of 4 at the free throw line. They just weren't able to get there, but he saw it showing from Florida Atlantic to be able to get the outright win, but a better showing from North Texas if you have money on it to be able able to get the cover. This was not a solid showing, as Memphis, ever since they had that just massive game against Wichita State, they've now went on a 3-game slide as UAB gets them by a count of 97-88. This is a Memphis team that all of a sudden defense is really starting to elude them, and if you're looking at the American Conference, we have been seeing some pretty harebrained results out there. Memphis 12 overs, 7 unders, and a push overall for the season for them, and UAB has went 12 overs to 7 unders themselves. But for Memphis, 3-point shooting was fine. They go 10 of 23 from 3-point range. Davy Jones provides 24 points, 9 boards, 7 steals. He also had 9 turnovers in this game. He could have legitimately went for a quadruple-double if you were looking at turnovers. And for UAB, they win the rebound battle 40-32 as Yaxel Lenborg has been one of the more underrated big men in all of college basketball. Pair of blocks, 23 points, 16 rebounds, and UAB 9 of 20 from 3-point range on this day. So they were able to get it done. What was not able to get it done was the over in East Carolina versus Temple. Despite the fact that this game goes to overtime, you get an under 70-64 the final. This was a closing total more around about 135.5, 136 or so as Temple. There you go, just 7 of 28 from 3-point range. They were able to cover the number. This was like 6.5 in a lot of spots for East Carolina. They win this game despite going 4 of 28 from 3-point range. RJ Felton went 3 of 12 from 3-point range, which means everyone else was 1 of 16. Felton, 24 points, 11 boards. He really bailed the team out in this one. And for Temple, they lose the turnover battle by a count of 14-8. They lose a rebound battle 43-40, and for East Carolina, they've now played 13 unders as 7 overs thus far this season, so it's been a little bit underwhelming. It's a SMU team that's played a lot of unders as well, but they played an over against Wichita State, and Wichita State, they were able to pull this one out late, 77-72. The Shockers, they get it done against an SMU team that has been quite impressive this year, and for SMU, a team that has been rough from 3-point range, they were able to go 9 of 19 from 3-point range, but where they lost this game was on the turnover front. 16-12, they were out-turnovered in this game. For Wichita State, they also win the rebound battle 36-29. It's been an SMU team that has been a pretty solid cover team, 11-7-1 against the spread, and this win for Wichita State bumps them up to now 6-12-1 against the spread, so they're building their place up. We saw a lot of Metro Atlantic play on Sunday as well, and you did see Quinnipiac be able to get the job done against Fairfield, this by a count of 66-64. It's been a Fairfield team that has been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball this season, but this is a game that very much fell harmlessly under the total as Fairfield 14 overs to 5 unders thus far this season. But for Quinnipiac, the way that they were able to get it done is they held Fairfield to shooting 5 of 26 from 3-point range on this day. Even though Quinnipiac loses the turnover battle 16-10, they were able to find a way to be able to get it done. And Niagara, 15 overs to 4 unders thus far this season. They play another over against Manhattan, and for Manhattan, they were able to get the job done by a count of 84-78 in overtime. This was a game where for Niagara, they had Braxton Bayless be able to go off for 21 points, and for Manhattan, a team that has been rough with their 3-point shooting all season long, they go 8 of 19 from 3-point range, and they had 26 points and 13 rebounds out of Daniel Rozan. He has come in from Weber State, and he's really been able to make an impact for this team. For Niagara, they win the turnover battle 16-15, but they lose a rebound battle as well. For Niagara, they've actually been a relatively good cover team all season long, just weren't able to get it done here. And speaking of not getting it done, Arkansas State, with 11 minutes remaining in their game against Louisiana Monroe, they were up by 16 points, and they made like your buddy at the bar, and they could not close. Louisiana Monroe storms back in overtime, and they're able to steal this one by a count of 85-82. It's been an Arkansas State team that has been really all over the place thus far this season, and for Arkansas State, they allowed Louisiana Monroe to be able to just hit the glass in this one, as for Louisiana Monroe, 18 offensive rebounds. For them, they actually lose the battle on the glass, 50-48. But for Arkansas State, they do go just 11 of 39 from 3-point range. So they hit 11 threes, and they still shot below 30% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, for Louisiana Monroe, you had Nika Merkatavashvili. Hopefully I said that correctly. I'm sure I did not. 24 points, 11 rebounds, and I believe that he had a big 3 that either won them the game or pushed them to overtime. So that was absolutely massive for them. What has been massive for many bettors has been fading the heck out of Siena as well. And Siena, they continue to be a fade, 63-52. The St. Peter's Peacocks were now 11-6, by the way, against the spread. They're able to get it done. No Michael Ely, no Sean Duru-Gordon for Siena, and no shot for them, as they had 18 made buckets and they had 19 turnovers in this game. And for St. Peter's, Latrell Joe Reed, 21 points on 21 shots for them, and Quinnipiac, by the way, is now 12-7 against the spread as well. So you've got a pair of teams be rock solid out there in the Metro Atlantic of being able to cover some numbers. Marist, who's been a good under team, by the way, 80-71. They take down Canisius as they went 10 of 19 from 3. I have no idea where that came from, but all of a sudden they were able to explode. Came Ferris off the bench, was a good shooter over at Robert Morris a few seasons ago. He was able to supply the team with 16 points off the bench, so that was very heartening for them. And hey, also heartening for some, the fact that old IUPUI, they were able to hang in there against Wright State. 83-76, the final in this one, as Wright State was not the right side, despite the fact that they were up in this game by a count of 18 points, and then IUPUI was able to storm back. This Wright State team is just absolutely brutal with regards to their defense. They go 8 of 16 from three-point range, and IUPUI only goes 2 of 13 from distance, but IUPUI was able to do a relatively solid job of taking care of the ball. They win the turnover battle by a count of 15-6, and this is the Wright State team that's outplayed 15 overs to 5 unders. This was a closing total in a lot of spots right around about a 159.5 or so. So this very much depended upon your number. This was an opener closer to 157, 157.5. So a lot of places you were able to get sort of a middle ground number there. And then to end the night, it was all New Mexico, 89-55. They just absolutely curb stomped Nevada in this one, and it's a New Mexico team that has been one of the better teams against the spread in all of college basketball, and Nevada has been able to make you quite a bit of money as well, but New Mexico now 14-5 against the spread, Nevada 12-9 after this one, as Nevada just could get absolutely nothing going on offense whatsoever. 19 made buckets, 15 turnovers. Did I have Jared Lucas go just 3 of 13 for 9 points, and he was the team's top scorer. Meanwhile, for New Mexico, they were also able to handle the glass. They won that battle 33-32. They win the turnover battle, and then they had Jalen House. 21 points, 6 assists, 6 steals. Nelly Jr. Joseph, a double-double. Jamal Mashburn Jr. was able to chip in their 14 points. Everything was working on this night for New Mexico. And if you are taking a look at college basketball and what we are all getting, it has been very much all about the unders in the last 7 days in college basketball. The overall for the season, overs are hitting at a clip of 51.4%. 1,746 overs, 1,649 unders, and home underdogs, they're still taking it on the chin. 441 at 455 and 16 against the spread. Meanwhile, overall for the season, home teams are hitting at about 50.5% against the spread. But if you're looking at the last 7 days in college basketball, home underdogs starting to make a comeback, but it's still been relatively rough for them. 53, 57, and 1 against the spread, and unders are hitting at a rate of about 53.5%, 174 unders to 151 overs. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now let's turn it forward to Monday and talk with our good friend Tristan Freeman of Boston Brackets about what we saw over the weekend. Take a look at the big games that we've got for Monday and the tenor of many of these power conferences. That is up next right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the BC Family Podcast. We're back to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, Tristan Freeman. Does such a good job of taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He is based out there in the great state of Pennsylvania, more specifically the Pittsburgh area, but he does a great job being able to gauge all 362 D1 teams in a sport that sometimes makes no sense whatsoever and adds craziness. He's able to stay sane. We very much appreciate all of his efforts, and to be able to follow Tristan on Twitter/X, that is at hoopsnut351 all together. Tristan, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. And Tristan, how about what we have been seeing the last few weeks in college basketball? It has been absolutely ridiculous with regards to all the upsets. And just what were some of your takeaways from Saturday? Because we've been noticing some of these more chic home underdogs, they've been having a little bit of a tougher time with it, but the ones that were able to rise up felt like were more defense-oriented teams like a Mississippi State.
Yeah, ironically enough, I think this past weekend was one of the more chalkier days, if you can believe it, considering how many upsets have been happening. But as you mentioned, Mississippi State on the road, one of the few road teams with a nice opportunity to get on the bubble, beat an Auburn team that I'm still kind of questioning at this point because they're lacking that big win that proves that they're a contender. They feasted on a fairly easy schedule in SEC play so far, avoiding the contenders. But, this past week it is a big concern. So I'm definitely interested to see how they look. And again, Mississippi State gets a big win. But in the SEC, that's looking a little top-heavy right now with Tennessee and Kentucky leading the way. I'm kind of curious if Auburn can get in that conversation, or do they belong more in the next tier along with Alabama?
Absolutely, and I do think that SEC landscape is so interesting because I really did feel like coming into the week, there was really a big three with Tennessee, Auburn, and then Kentucky. But I do think that we need to talk a little bit more about Alabama because they played such a tough schedule. And if you look at the metrics, they're looking at them much more favorably than they do the polls. And personally, I always look at the metrics much more than the polls. If you talk to any sports bettor, they put really not a lot of credence whatsoever in polls other than fading teams that are maybe getting a little bit overhyped and overvalued. But I mean, what do you make out of really those top teams in the SEC? Because I do feel like the offense this year has been much better in the SEC, and I feel like there's just such little separating those teams like Auburn, like Kentucky, Tennessee, and now we're talking about Alabama being in that mix as well.
Yeah, Alabama has quietly played a tough SEC schedule to open things up. They have wins over Mississippi State, South Carolina, who's been a big surprise, and Auburn in the big rivalry matchup. So they've actually handled business. The defense in that 3-game losing streak against those top 10 teams at the end of non-con sort of put them on the back burner for now, but they're still one of the best offenses in the country, consider that they just dropped over 100 on LSU this past weekend. Mark Sears is an All-American caliber player, and they're getting more consistent production from Grant Nelson, sophomore Rylan Griffin, who is sort of the breakout transfer candidate. Aaron Estrada has been fine for them. As long as the defense is good enough, considering that they probably have the best offense in the country, I don't see why Alabama can not only get back to being ranked, but climb up the ladder and potentially contend for an SEC title. They do have a loss against Tennessee, but they're going to have opportunities to sort of get, really marquee wins because they get both Tennessee and Kentucky at the end of February.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that really the top four of the SEC you could put up against the big four of any conference, and I think that they'd be able to compete. And I'd probably put the SEC up against even the top four of the Big 12. Insert your favorite conference here, the Big East, and I think that they would be the best four out of all of them. As joining me on the show, we do have Tristan Freeman, who does amazing work over at Bustin' Brackets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Tristan, obviously, the big day of college basketball from the weekend was Saturday, but is it possible that perhaps the top two teams in all of college basketball did not play Saturday, but rather Sunday? We saw Xavier just get absolutely trounced by UConn. That was unfair what UConn did, 99-56, and arguably the final score was not as close as the actual game. I mean, my goodness, that was incredible. And then Purdue, it wasn't a cover from my side of things in terms of a betting perspective, but they handled that game against Rutgers. They went on the road to the rack. They won that game 68-60, and I really do feel like these might be the top two teams in all of college basketball, though the margins between those two and everyone else, like we were talking about, the big few out there in the SEC, you're able to insert your favorite team here. Arizona has fallen off, but I do think that's razor thin, but I think those might be the best two teams in all of college basketball right now.
I think both of those teams were highly motivated for different reasons. You look at the UConn-Xavier game, Xavier nearly beat the Huskies in the first go-around, and I think UConn wanted to make it very clear that they're not on the same level. And I think that blowout from literally start to finish showed it. And then Purdue, they exercised a demon on Sunday by beating Rutgers. They've historically struggled there on the road, including a couple of thrilling, heartbreaking results. So I think the fact that even though, the second half got closer than expected, they still got the win they needed, stay close to Wisconsin in this title race and locking up that one seed even further. Overall, it was a good win for Purdue, and I think it's something that they needed to prove that, they can win away from home because they have looked at least vulnerable in Big Ten play.
Yeah, they were looking a little bit vulnerable, but man, that was a very difficult environment to play in. It looked a little bit closer than what it was, in my opinion, and with regards to this Purdue team, having Giant of the Year Zach Edey just being able to bear down and this defense step it up on Sunday. That was something that was impressive to me, even though the offense wasn't quite what we've been seeing it throughout the entirety of the season. And that does beg the question, where do we stand with regards to Big Ten? Because we have absolutely no questions with Purdue. This is by far the top team out there in the conference. Wisconsin, I feel like, has very much solidified themselves as that number two team. A lot of people forget because there were so few games on Friday, but a very impressive win for them against Michigan State. They were able to take that season series past those two teams. I feel like it's just a big, giant hodgepodge in that conference, though.
I think we can put Illinois in the tier of them, at least of certified good NCAA tournament teams. We'll see how they look with Shannon fully back in the fold, but I think they're fine. And Northwestern, they just keep winning. Like in the past, they've sort of been 500 in league play and sort of skirting on the bubble. But thanks to that Purdue win, I think they're going to be in really good shape going forward. So they're fine. Everyone else, it's really a toss-up. And the problem is, even with Rutgers and Penn State and Michigan at the bottom, those aren't gimmies. And they're good enough to beat the likes of Nebraska and Maryland, Minnesota. And then in years past, the Big Ten has dominated the non-con when it comes to building elite resumes so everyone can beat each other on, but Maryland and Indiana in particular has such awful non-con resumes, metrics-wise, that they just have so much work to do that going 500 isn't going to work. They're going to need at least 12, 13 wins, and I don't see that happening for them. Iowa's in the situation, too, where they have a lot of work to do. Michigan State, thankfully, because of that Baylor win, they're going to be on the right side of the bubble, but they're still under 500, and they're at 500 and, can't get another big win. And right now there's only 3 teams that you can get a big win off of. They're going to be in trouble. I think this is a league who typically gets 8-9 bids. They're probably going to be around the 5 range, and it's a down year for them, but they still have a couple of teams that you can make a good case that can still be Final Four contenders still.
Absolutely. I do think that with what we're seeing out of Wisconsin, what we're seeing out of Purdue, that is something very encouraging for the conference. But at the same time, man, it has been a little bit wobbly for a lot of those teams, and the Big Ten is certainly going to be of intrigue. But coming to the forefront on Monday is going to be a big matchup out there in the Big 12 that we all expected to be brutal. You've got a bottom team out there in West Virginia, but even they are able to rise up when they're in Morgantown. On the road, a little bit of a different story. But what do you make out of the matchup that we are going to be seeing on Monday between Houston and Texas? Because I was talking about us perhaps having the top 2 teams in all of college basketball playing on Sunday. If I were to have a team that would be challenged those 2, it would be Houston. But as we know, big road test. This is going to be a golden opportunity for a Texas team that they just have not been what I've been expecting all season long. And on top of that, an interstate rivalry that I'm sure Houston has been looking forward to for a very, very long time.
Yeah, the whole horns down controversy is sort of distracting us from the fact that they're on the bubble. They just haven't looked good coming off a loss to BYU where they probably have more talent on paper, but it just never works out for them. And relying on Max Asmus to drop 25 a game just isn't going to work. Ithiel Horton's in and out of the lineup. They don't know what to do with him. Their bench, which was already thin to begin with, it has gotten thinner when it comes to who can play at the Big 12 level. And then Kadeem Cedric, Dylan Dessou, the injuries, the natural inconsistencies, Dylan Mitchell not taking that next step in his development, along with Tyrese Hunter, too. Ever since he left Iowa State, he's never taken that huge leap of being, one of the top point guards in the country. They're sort of a mediocre team, and they didn't do much in the non-con, and while there's always going to be plenty of opportunities in league play, they're going to have to start getting those. And what better way to do it than Houston, who themselves have shown to be vulnerable away from home to start league play. So it's a great opportunity for them, and we'll see what Texas can do. But if Max Asmus gets shut down by those guards for the Cougars, it could be a long night for them.
Yeah, it really could be. And this is a Houston defense that they are number 1 in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. That is a team that is just going to maul you night in and night out. So that is not going to be fun, to say the least. Forever has to match up with them moving forward, and it's old Texas who's going to be getting that matchup. As joining me on the show, we do have Tristan Freeman. He does tremendous work over at Bustin' Brackets, and he is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Tristan, I do think that we've also got another interesting matchup that we are going to be seeing on Monday as well between Duke and Virginia Tech. I know you do an absolutely tremendous job of taking a look at the fine conference of the ACC. And right now, if you're looking at the betting lines, it is Duke who finds themselves as about a 3 or so point favorite, which I personally set them as a little bit of a bigger favorite, but I don't have too many qualms with regards to that line. But how do you see this one playing out between a Duke team that they have hit the road a little bit more this year, to their credit, than they have in past years, but they're going up against a Virginia Tech team that no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I do feel like they truly need this game, and I do feel like with Virginia Tech, after a rough start to the season, they've been able to come into their own a little bit more as well.
They've taken care of business as of late, 3 straight wins, although 2 of them were at home against Boston College and Georgia Tech. So they handled business. But like you said, it's a must-win for them because they got Miami on the road right after. Duke's vulnerable, either home or away. There's just a team that cannot beat opponents and put them away. I mean, Kyle Filipowski can have big games or small games. The guards can be a little bit inconsistent. And defensively, teams aren't afraid of them. Teams can absolutely shoot on them, as we saw with the Pitt and Clemson games. And what better team to exploit that than Virginia Tech with Sean Padula and Hunter Couture, two of the better shooters in the country. If those guards can go off, this absolutely can be a game that Virginia Tech can win. And as you said, they're going to need that win because they're still lacking that marquee win. Right now, the best thing they have is Clemson, but even they're arguably getting slower to the bubble. Although Iowa State's pretty good as well, and they don't have any awful losses. But again, in the ACC, you're either really good or you're on the bubble based on how people interpret the league right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting to take a look at this ACC landscape because I do feel like, much like we have been seeing in past years, there is a little bit of a divide between the haves and the have-nots in this conference. I think that it's much more balanced than what we've seen in past years, and I think that you would agree with that. But how do you view the overall ACC landscape? Because Duke, they're coming off of a game where they pulled it out against Clemson. It wasn't comfortable, but they were able to pull it out in the end. And I do think that when it comes to just taking a look at the ACC, there have been teams that have been able to rise up a little bit more, like a Clemson. Honestly, Boston College has been a bit of a better school this year as well. Wake Forest is a team that I like to see, and I think that they're going to get more overall bids, but there are still those slugs out there, and it's been interesting to watch a team like Notre Dame that we thought was going to be awful just continue to be that pest that isn't necessarily winning games, but is scaring the bejesus out of teams.
The problem the ACC has is that the middle just isn't overly strong. I mean, NC State was a team that we thought could be good, but they really struggled. Wake Forest has been fine, but they still can't get that signature win. And, you know, teams like Pitt, Boston College, even Georgia Tech can come up for games against anyone. And considering that we already saw Virginia take an awful loss to Louisville, they're going to have to get better than 500 in league play. So if these teams just continue to beat up on each other, more importantly, no one can get a win over Duke and North Carolina, the two marquee opportunities for resume builder, they could find themselves in another situation where it's 3 to 4 bids. I mean, the fact that Florida State is 6-3, tied for third, but thanks to an awful non-conference performance, still isn't anywhere near the bubble, that's going to be a problem because now they're good enough to spoil, but not good enough to actually benefit from it themselves. So it's a tough spot for the league, but eventually someone's going to have to knock off North Carolina to get that ultimate signature win. And luckily, they and Duke, to some degree, have put themselves in a position where wins over them will truly matter.
Yeah, I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get out of the middle of the ACC moving forward. And if Virginia Tech can get a win over Duke, that is going to be massive for them. And this is a Duke team that is looking to help out an ACC that has some very top-heavy teams. And the team that has really been standing out to me the most, and I want to get your thoughts on them, is North Carolina, because with North Carolina, we knew that the offense was going to be there for them this year, but lo and behold, they've actually been able to play a little bit of defense. I'm not sure how, I'm not sure where this came from, but all of a sudden they've actually been a really good defensive team, and they're a team that on the national landscape I've very much warmed up on. I'm not sure how you view this team, but I very much have become very bullish on this North Carolina team, and I like what I'm seeing out of them.
Yeah, well, it helps that their two best players sort of fit this modern game. And I mean R.J. Davis and Harrison Ingram. I mean, Davis averaging over 21 a game, and he's just been consistently great. He and Love sort of had those your turn, my turn deals, but it's clearly Davis's turn, and he's taking complete control. And then, you know, Armando Bacot, he's still a double-double machine, and he can give you 20 any given night. But seeing Ingram, the Stanford transfer, sort of take over as the guy that can do it all. He can give you 15 points one night if need be. He can give you 15 rebounds another night, play really good defense, be an extra facilitator. He's just done it all, and he's been the perfect complementary piece in the star form for the Tar Heels has allowed them to improve just about everywhere. They finally have a bench. I mean, you look at Seth Trimble and you look at Jalen Washington, guys that are giving you impact, even if it's not a ton, have been good enough. And then if Ellie Cadeau can go off for 20 on any night, you know, whenever he has a big game, they're almost unbeatable. And he's going to continue to get better. And even if he does eventually hit a freshman wall, it's fine because you have someone like Davis who can truly carry them on their backs for a win.
Yeah, it has been incredible to take a look at. And Tristan, is there anything else for Monday that you might be taking a look at? Because obviously we've got the big two games between Houston and Texas, Virginia Tech versus Duke. And then you get a whole bunch of SWAC, you get a whole bunch of MEAC, you get a little bit of Patriot League. Anything else that's standing out to you, or is more of your attention going to be on Tuesday and beyond, since it is a little bit of a later day on Monday?
Because of how the schedule works out with the Southland, you're always going to be interested in McNeese State, who has continued to build a bubble resume, considering they still got the wins over VCU and Michigan. Those aren't great, but if they can just keep winning and get 30-plus wins and not take one loss in league play, we saw last week that they survived against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, arguably their toughest opponent. So they can just keep winning, and that's going to be a team that other bubble teams are going to hate and hope that they can just get the auto bid. But from a bracketology standpoint, that's always interested. But at this point, there's always just the big 2 games on Monday, and then you just look forward to what happens the rest of the week, because there's definitely going to be a nice slate on Tuesday.
Yep, there is going to be a tremendous slate on Tuesday. You don't get a ton of Tuesday games, but you get a lot of high-quality Tuesday games, and you always get quality with this, man, because, Tristan, you do absolutely amazing work taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time you join this podcast, you deliver such great insights. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Absolutely. You can follow me at HoopsNut351 on X/Twitter. You can also follow at Bustin' Brackets for all the latest college basketball news and notes and power rankings, and etc.
Awesome. It is always great to be able to get Tristan aboard. He does such a tremendous job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Whenever he joins this podcast, he lends such good insights, much like he did today. So big thanks to Tristan for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And coming up next, it's that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. It is always great to get Tristan Freeman aboard. He does absolutely amazing work over at Bustin' Brackets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He is very much locked in on everything that we're seeing out there on the East Coast. But on top of that, all 362 D1 teams. He does a great job of being able to cover them all. Every time he joins this podcast, lends tremendous insight. So big thanks to Tristan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the 2 games involving the power conferences first, and then everything else is in time order at the bottom. I could list off the conferences that are in the extra games board, but there's literally 2 games on the normal Las Vegas betting board: Duke, Virginia Tech, Houston, Texas, and then everything else is at the bottom. So that's a much easier way of explaining it, and let's get things started with 881, 882 on the betting board. It is Duke on the road facing off against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech opens up a 3.5-point underdog at home. Now they're a 3-point dog. Totals between 146 and 146.5. I did set my total at 148.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. It's a Virginia Tech team that has been a little bit wobbly with their offense throughout the season, but they've really been able to find it recently. 76-plus points in each of their last 3 games. Lynn Kidd has been able to do a solid job down low. He is going to lose that battle down low, by the way. He has to go up against one Kyle Filipowski, shooting darn near 40% from 3. Been able to supply north of 15 points, 8+ rebounds. Yeah, that's going to be very difficult, but he's been able to get the team right around 15 points, 7 to 8 rebounds per game, and he's been solid for a Virginia Tech team that they do play significantly better at home rather than in a road/neutral environment. I believe that Virginia Tech won at home against Duke last season, and this is a Virginia Tech team that is scoring 21 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral environment. You've also got one of the most efficient offenses in all of college basketball in Duke, who they honestly haven't taken the world's biggest drop-off when they've been on the road. They have been scoring about 13.5 points fewer per 100 possessions, but they're still a rock-solid offense. They've been able to do a good job of taking care of the ball. 9.2 turnovers per contest. That really doesn't rise too much when they are away from home, as they've got a guy, Therese Proctor. It's giving you about 3.5 assists to only about 1.3 turnovers per contest. Out of your top 6 scorers, 5 of them for Duke shoot at least 37.9% from distance. Lone exception is Mr. Mark Mitchell down low. He's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. This is a Duke Duke team that I do think is going to be able to do a relatively solid job down low. You do have Sean Badula on the flip side for Virginia Tech. Sometimes turns the ball over a bit, but he does a good job of being able to do all that offense. He's been able to give you 15 plus points per contest after a rough start to the year. 3-point shooting, he along with Hunter Couture, a north of 40% 3-point shooter the last 2 seasons, have been able to pick it up. And it's not like Duke has been overly dominant on the glass. They're 67th in the country with regards to rebound rate. That said, this is a Virginia Tech team that's more around 88th though. And with this Virginia Tech team, you do have to fear that the defense is just not going to be up to snuff in this game, because with Virginia Tech, it is a defense that is improved from season ago. Last year it was pretty unsightly awful, but they still do have a ways to go until they are where they need to be, in my opinion, to be a top contender. Virginia Tech 96th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, though they are giving up right around about 13.3 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot court environment. And for Duke, this team is only giving up 2 points more per 100 possessions when they are away from home rather than when they are at home. They're a top 50 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but in a road/shoot court environment, that actually ascends to a top 35 mark. So it is a spot where I do think that Duke is going to avenge your loss from last season in Blacksburg. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Duke made them a 4.5 point favorite. Think that this is close enough for late game filling, and both of these offenses have been prolific. So semi-total 148.5 looking over and looking at Duke. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas board before we hit the extra games. 883, 884. Houston's on the road facing off against Texas, and Texas is back to being a underdog of 5 to 5.5 points. Totals between 130 and 130.5. Did semi-total at a 130.5. 130 or less, I'm going to be looking at the over. If we get past 131, that'll be my buy point on the under. It's a Houston team that's doing a superb job with their defense. And a little bit earlier, some of the very, very initial openers, I was seeing this more around about a 131, 131.5. And if that's the case, I'd be looking under. And heck, at a 130.5, I would rather have it under rather than an over, because this Houston team, number one in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They are just absolutely mauling teams. Now, I will say this, Houston, they aren't quite the same team on the road, but that's because they're giving up 69.1 points per 100 possessions when they're at home. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. They're still giving up 94 points per 100 possessions away from home. That's still a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. So they're going to be fine. They're going up against a Texas team that they truly have been all over the place this season. Dylan Dessou has been able to give them a nice bump with a double-figure amount of points, but really, you've got one guy that's able to give you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. That'd be Dylan Mitchell. Now, Jawan Roberts and company for Houston, while you don't have that one guy that gives you a double-figure amount of boards, Roberts is the only guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. They just maul you down low. Top 15 team in the country with regards to rebound rate, year in and year out. A top 20 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and they just don't beat themselves. 9.1 turnovers per game. Jamal Shed gives you now about 12 points per contest. That's been rising a little bit, but top of that, 2.3 steals, 6 assists per contest. This team is in the top 15 nationally with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's not like Texas is overly careless with the ball, but still 12 turnovers per game. That's a little bit of a concern. This is a Texas team that they do rely upon the three ball quite a bit, as well as among players that have made at least 1 3 this year. Each out of their top 5 scorers have been able to shoot at least 35% from 3, headlined by Max Asmith with about 17.5 points per contest. But you do have your fears with this Texas team going up against a bunch that is just so deep as well in Houston. You've got someone like a Damian Dunn that's able to pop it from 3-point range. I really like what I've been seeing out of LJ Cryer this year. He's been your main scorer with about 17 to 18 points per game. One of the best pure shooters that you're going to find in all of college basketball. He takes tough shots, he makes tough shots, and they're going up against a Texas team that, with regards to guarding the arc, they're about 219th in all of college basketball, though they do allow opponents to shoot only about 30.7% from 3 at home compared to north of 38.5% away from home. This is a spot where at a 130.5 or higher, the number that we're at right now, I'd be looking at the under. I would need a 130 or less to look over, but with this Houston team, their defense travels. I think they get the job done. They have something to prove in the great state of Texas. 1 to lay up to 6 with Houston, set them as a 6.5 point favorite, and looking at this total under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
This starts with my DK Network write-up pick, 306-633, 306-634. Holy Cross plays us to Boston U. Boston U is a favorite of between 4.5 to 5 points, and your total on this game is between 135.5 and 136. My write-up here is going to be on the under. I set my total at a 130. You got a pair of teams that are playing in almighty slow tempo. Both of these teams outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game, and both of these teams 273rd or worse in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and this is is a Boston U team that's actually relatively good with their defense. Boston U, overall 117th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. That's 21st, though, in a road/neutral court environment. Boston U allowing 6.1 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. They're a top 75 team with regards to being able to guard the three-point arc when they're away from home, allowing opponents to shoot 32.1% from three. And this is a Holy Cross team that really does rely upon their three-point shooting. They're about 145th in all of college basketball with regards to three-point shooting percentage, and they need that outside shooting because they don't do a good job of being able to pull in offensive rebounds. 331st in all of college basketball is Holy Cross with regards to offensive rebound rate. This team is going to get mauled on the glass by a Boston U team that has some solid pieces down low. Otto Landrum has been able to give you about 6 boards per contest. Meanwhile, Holy Cross, they're just relying upon Joe Octave doing a little bit of everything. 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots about 30% from three for a team that as a whole. They're not too bad with their three-point shooting. A.J. Willis, Joe Nugent, both have been able to shoot north of 40% from three, but they've had A.J. Willis be in and out of the fold thus far this season. They're getting back Bo Montgomery, but he's been banged up, and ever since he has returned, he hasn't necessarily been 100% in 3 of the last 4 games that he has played in. Actually, 3 of the last 5, he has scored 7 points or fewer, so that's a big, giant issue for Boston U. This is very much a whole is greater than the sum of its parts team. They don't have a single guy on the roster that is currently giving you north of 10 points per contest. Leading scorer is Miles Brewster, 3.5 assists, 9.5 points per game. Boston U okay at not beating themselves, but you'd still like to see them cut down on those 11.8 turnovers per game because they are a team that they do play at a pretty super duper slow pace. This is a spot where I do think that offense is just not going to be had. This is also a Boston U team that's 334th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside of the top 305 in terms of both 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. You've got your issues there. They've been able to get a little bit more down low with Anthony Morales coming back into the fold. He's given the team 6+ points at each of the last 5 games, so I do think the Boston U should be able to win the game, but I think that this is too lofty in a game where points is going to be at a premium with regards to the spread. I set my line at 2, so being able to get 4.5 to 5, I'm looking at Holy Cross as an underdog, and with regards to my DK Network right pick, I just don't see it really gets past 65 points. I set my total at 130. I'm looking at the under, and my write-up is going to be that under to go along with the points with Holy Cross. They're at 6.635, they're at 6.636. Coppin St plays us Howard. Howard is a favorite of 7.5 points on the road. Total on this game between 134.5 and 135. I said Howard as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Coppin St team that has been one of the saddest offenses in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Only Mississippi Valley State is scoring fewer points than them, and if it wasn't for Mississippi Valley State, there's no other team in college basketball other than Mississippi Valley State and Maryland Eastern Shore that's averaging fewer than 86.1 points per 100 possessions. Coppin State, 79.7 points per 100 possessions. Now, I will say this. They are averaging about 19 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And Justin Winston has not been terrible for the team. He has been able to register for them double figures, so he's been a little bit of a do-it-all guy as he was a starter at St. Bonaventure a few seasons ago. 14 points, 5 boards, and it's just a team that needs a little bit of three-point shooting, and they have to rely upon Winston, who's shooting 28.5% from 3 to supply that, as that's above average for the team. They're shooting 27.4% from 3. Coppin State, 16.5 turnovers per game. Now, I will say this about Coppin State. It's actually not the world's saddest defense. I'm not going to say that they're like the Steel Curtain or anything like that, but with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, the Coppin State team is about 158th in the country, giving up 9.2 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. But now they have to go up against a pair of guys in Bryce Harris, Seth Towns. They're both giving between 15.5 and 16 points per contest. Both are supplying 6.5 rebounds per game, and Harris shoots 41% from 3. Towns at 6'8", 6'9", shooting about 37.5% from the outside. Howard is turning the ball over about 16 times per contest, but they do have plenty of outside shooting. Howard should also be able to win the battle on the glass as well. Coppin State 357th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. This is our team that's clocking in more around about 183rd, and with the way the Coppin State just is not able to bury shots whatsoever, even against a Howard defense that they certainly are going to let up their threes. They are well outside the top 250 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that said, this is a Coppin State team that I just don't think that they're going to be able to do their part with regards to scoring to be able to get the W in this one or be able to get the cover. I said Howard as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number despite the fact that Howard is one of your more up-tempo teams in college basketball. I did set my total at a 138. So a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at this total over, as I think that Howard does just enough to do their part to be able to get this game over, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Howard. 306, 637, 306, 638 is Norfolk State, and they're going to be playing us Morgan State. Morgan State is an underdog of 12.5 points, and your total on this game, it is 147. And with Norfolk State, I did set them as a favorite of 11 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 12 plus here. I mean, Coppin St was more like a 14 to a 14.5 point underdog a few days ago. Morgan State, I think, is much more than like 2.5 points better than them. It's a Coppin St team that can't put the ball in the bucket. Meanwhile, Morgan State, you do have Winston Tabbs, who's been able to give you about 16.3 points per contest. This has been a team that has been dealing with ailments all season long, as Miles Thompson is back out of the fold after it looked like they were going to be getting him back for conference play, but been able to get double figures, about 10.5 points, 3.5 assists out of Cameron Hobbs, who's been able to shoot 42.5% from three-point range. And when Morgan State has their full allotment of guys, this team still stinks on the glass. You've only got one guy giving you north of 5 rebounds per game, as you've gotten about 7.6 boards out of Allen Amadu, and they are going to be outgunned with that regard. But it's not a Norfolk State team that they themselves do a tremendous job on the glass. You really don't have anyone other than Jalen Darden who's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at the rebound rate of Norfolk State, they're about 230th in all of college basketball. Morgan State, now they are clocking in 341st, but again, they've dealt with injuries. They're starting to get a little bit healthier, and for Norfolk State, they completely rely upon Jamari Thomas to be able to run this offense. Comes in from UNC Wilmington, and he's been solid. 17 points per contest, shooting 37.5% from three-point range. It is a Norfolk State team that they're turning the ball over about 12 times per contest, but I do think that with Norfolk State, they also play at too slow of a tempo to be able to win this game by margin as well, even if they really wanted to. As for Norfolk State, they're in the bottom 5 in all of college basketball with regards to possessions per game. They have really slowed it down, 360th out of 362 teams. Now, I will say, they're actually playing at 10 possessions faster at home rather than on the road, and this is a Morgan State team that they're always looking to gun it. They're a top 100 team with regards to total possessions per game, but it's a Norfolk State team that, despite the fact that they play slow, they do have their turnover issues. This has been a team that has had a tough time with their offense as well. 68 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games in the MEAC, and this is a Morgan State team that they've gotten to at least 74 in 3 out of their last 4 games. Defense is very lackadaisical, giving up at least 75 points in every MEAC game as far as the season, so it's something's got to give. Got a Morgan State team that's given up a bunch of points playing up-tempo. Norfolk State playing super-duper slow. I set my total at a 143. I do think that Norfolk State is going to be able to slow this game down, but not win by margin. I set my number at 11.5, taking the points with Morgan State and the under. 306, 639, 306, 640. Delaware State plays with NC Central, and NC Central is a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. Your total is 133.5. With NC Central, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number. It's a Delaware State team that they play somewhat up-tempo, but they just haven't had a lot of rhyme or reason outside their main 2 guys. And in this conference, if you've got 2 big-time scorers, that really does bode well for you, as you've been able to have a combined about 32 points out of Jevin Munoz along with Martez Robinson. They combined for 10.5 boards, 4 steals, and both shoot north of 32% from 3-point. For a Delaware State team as a whole, they're shooting 28.5% from the outside, 15 turnovers per contest out of them, and it is a Delaware State team that has some guys that are able to do a relatively okay job down low. Like you've got Wesley Oba, who's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. NC Central, they do not have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 boards per contest. Manuel Izabuner has been able to do that. And for NC Central, they are just 302nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, Delaware State, they're clocking in more around 98th. But this is an NC Central team that does rank in the top 25 nationally in terms of being able to cut off the arc in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Going against a Delaware State team that they've been much more stout inside. This Delaware State team is actually a top 125 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but 342nd in all of college basketball with regards to 3-point shooting percentage defense, and I think that that's where NC Central is going to be able to carve them up. You've got a trio of guys in Po'boy King, along Jadarius Harris, Fred Cleveland Jr. These 3 guys have been able to combine for about 45 points per contest. Harris shoots 41.5% from 3-point range. King is only giving you about 29% 3-point shooting, but he and Cleveland combine for about 3 steals per contest. It's an NC Central team that is really the top team in the conference with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. A little bit of a top-heavy team, but they're getting a little bit more out of Perry Smith Jr., a guy that had 9 points, 5 boards over the weekend against Maryland Eastern Shore. So I like what I'm seeing there. It is a Delaware State team that they've got their big 2, but really not much much else. And this has been an NC Central bunch that has really been able to rise up with regards to their defense. They have now given up 71 points or fewer in each out of their last 8 games, and I do think that they are going to be able to do a solid job in this rodeo against a Delaware St team that is sloppy with the ball and isn't so great with regards to their offense. This is an NC Central team that I think gets the job done outright on the money line, and because Delaware State is allowing the arc so much, and because I do think that this is going to be a close game that does warrant a little bit of fouling, I do think that this is going to be a bit of a higher scoring game, especially with Delaware State in the top 80 in terms of total possessions per game. Set my line at 2.5, so want to lay with NC Central. Set my total 138.5, so also looking over 306-641, 306-642. Southeast Louisiana is going to be on the road facing off against Houston Christian, and Houston Christian does find themselves as between a 3.5 to a 4-point underdog, and your total on this game is anywhere between 139.5 and 140.5. It's a circumstance where I did set Southeast Louisiana as a 3.5 point favorite. So at the 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Houston Christian. This is a Houston Christian team as in the bottom 10 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but they have been able to do a good job of being able to lock down from 3-point range. There's very few things that this team is doing right, but they're 57th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Houston Christian team that is certainly going to give up the ball. They are turning the ball over north of 15 times per contest, going up against the Southeast Louisiana team that they themselves are in the bottom 30 with regards to possessions per game, yet they turn it over 13.5 times per game. Roger McFarland, he's going to be the most versatile player out there on the floor. 14 points, 8 boards, a steal per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and this is a Houston Christian team that you look at them and you know that they're not going to do a tremendous job on the glass, but I don't think that they get completely outgunned. You've got 2 guys in Bonke Maring who have been able to give you about 8.5 or so rebounds per game, the other one being Michael Emaraja Bay. Hopefully I said that correctly. I always try to avoid pronouncing that last name because it's harebrained, but these 2 guys have also been able to combine for about 21.5 points per contest. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Jay Alvarez. He's been back in the fold for the team's last few games, and he's been able to deliver at least 14 points in each out of the last 5 games. Granted, has come with a bunch of turnovers, but you've also got Marcus Green, who's your main 3-point shooter, shooting 40.5% from 3-point, shipping in there 14 points per game, and now they're getting a little bit more from the outside from someone like a Dom Capriati, who's been able to shoot 45.5% from distance. That was really lacking from this team towards the beginning part of the season. And for Southeast Louisiana, they're actually a top 200 team with regards to rebound rate. They're not bad there, but they're 310th in the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Houston Christian overall for the year shooting sub 30% from 3, but with getting Alvarez back in the fold, with being able to find some guys off the bench, they're able to pop it from 3-point range. I do think that Houston Christian is going to be able to hold in there. Now it's a case of something's got to give. You've got a Southeast Louisiana team that they have not been able to exceed the 71-point plateau in any of their last 6 games. Meanwhile, this is a Houston Christian team that they themselves have allowed at least 77 points in each of their last 3 games. Southeast Louisiana super slow. Houston Christian top 30 with regards to possessions per game. This is a circumstance where I did set my total at a 143.5. So seeing the 139.5, 140.5, I'm defaulting to the offense. I'm looking at the over. I think that this is a close game, close enough for late game fouling. Did set my line at 3.5. So here at the 4, taking the points with Houston Christian to go along with that total over 306-643, 306-644. Lamar is going to be playing us in New Orleans. New Orleans is a underdog of 9 points. In your total on this game, it is 159.5 to 160. With Lamar, I did set them as a favorite of 8 points. So here at the 9, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with New Orleans. New Orleans had a rough week last week, unable to cover both games. They're currently riding a 4-game losing streak, but this is a team that's able to put the ball in the bucket. Jordan Johnson, a top 6 scorer in all of college basketball, 22 points, 4 assists, shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. Now, where this New Orleans team really has their issues is down low. You've got Jamon Vincent along Tyson Jackson being able to combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game, but they really don't have a lot of size with New Orleans in terms of their rebound rate. It's one of the most grody in all of college basketball, 328th. They're going up against a Lamar team that it's really a whole is greater than some of its parts approach, and they're not too bad on the glass. They're about 191st with this regard. For Lamar, you've got 4 separate guys that give you between 11.1 and 12.3 points per contest, as you've got BB Knight, Chris Pryor, Terry Anderson, along with Adam Hamilton. Hamilton and Anderson have been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, while Knight and Pryor combine to shoot about 40% from 3-point range. With Lamar, though, this is a bunch that is going to turn it over a little bit. They do turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, and it's a Lamar team that they do give it up from the outside as well. 252nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage for this New Orleans team. They have fallen on some tough times recently at being able to guard the three-point arc, but they're right on par with that at about 238th. And this is a New Orleans team that I do think is going to be able to do a relatively okay job of being able to generate some turnovers. With New Orleans, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they come in about 142nd in all of college basketball. But if you look at them in a road/neutral court environment, they're more in the top 50 with this regard. Lamar, they are 51st in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but forcing fewer turnovers at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. It is a case where I do think that Lamar going to be able to win from within, but New Orleans, they've got a little bit of a hope in the backcourt to be able to aid Johnson. Caleb Wilson-Rouse has been able to give you about 11 points. He's shooting in the low to mid-30s from three-point range, 12-plus points in 3 out of the team's last 4 games. You've been able to get a little bit of production, right around about 6 points, 3.5 boards out of Josh Short as well. Short does come up short on a lot of his threes, but he's been able to help out a little bit more with regards to facilitation, coming off of 4 boards and 4 assists in the team's most recent game against McNeese. So with New Orleans, while I do think that they lose the battle on the glass, and his team as well outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, this is also a Lamar team that, though they've been able to rise up a little bit more defensively in their last 2 games, this is still a squad that has given up north of 75 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. I do think that you're going to be able to get quite a bit of offense here. I think that they set this total just a little bit too high. I set my total at a 156, so I'm going to be taking a look at this total under, but with New Orleans, I do think that they hold in there. Set my line at 8, so we'll take the 9 with New Orleans and the under. 306-645, 306-646. It is Florida A&M, and they're going to be playing us at Jackson State, and Jackson State does find themselves as a favorite of 5 points. Your total between 146.5 and 147 with Jackson State. I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. At the 5, I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a Jackson State team that does have their issues with turnovers. They've been turning the ball over about 15 times per contest. That said, this is a Jackson State team that has both the best scorer and the best rebounder in this game. Cat Evans has been able to give you 19 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, shoots 45% from three-point range, and then Zeke Cook is a cooking. About 7.5 rebounds, only about 6 points per contest, but does a relatively solid job down low for a Jackson State team that they certainly have this Florida A&M team outgunned on defense. And it's not to say that Jackson State is some sort of a, purple people eaters with regards to their defense or anything like that, but in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's a Jackson State team that they're clocking in 240th in all of college basketball, and that just speaks how bad Florida A&M is. 358th in the country. I will say for Florida A&M, they are giving up about 8.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home, and Keith Lamar, he has been able to supply the team with 15.5 points, 6 boards per contest, shoots 38% from three-point range, actually down to 13.5 points per contest, but he's getting some help out of Jalen Spear. Spear has been back for now 7 games, and he has been able to just put up some numbers. This guy has been able to deliver double figures in every single one of the games that he has played in thus far this season. I'm not sure why he was out towards the beginning part of the season, and when he was in there last year as well, he was averaging about 10.5 points per contest, but was limited to 13 games, so I have no idea why he's been out for so long, but with them in, it's been much better for the team. He gives up 5 assists, but he also gives up 4.3 turnovers per game as well. That's a little bit less than terrific going up against a Jackson State team that they are able to generate about 7.5 steals per game. It is a Jackson State team that they've been a very good, consistent offense. They've been able to get to at least 70 points in all but one of their games in SWAC play this far this season. Meanwhile, for Florida A&M, this is still a team that is very much lacking on the glass. Other than Lamar, you don't have a single guy that's able to give you north of 4 boards per contest. Once again, not to say that Jackson State is anything amazing with regards to a rebound rate. They're about 210th, but for Florida A&M, they're just going to get flattened on the glass. 306th in the country with this regard. It is a Florida A&M team that they get very loose with the ball, even with having now their full allotment of guys in the fold. It has been a case where the defense has just not been able to hold up whatsoever. They have given up at least 70 points at all but one of their games out there in the SWAC. So while Florida A&M playing a little bit more up-tempo, this Jackson State team is just a bit more well-rounded. I do think that they get the job done in a game where I do think that it's a little bit higher scoring. I did set my total at 147.5. I do think that Spear has been able to give Florida A&M some nice pop on offense, has not really helped out on defense, so looking at the over, and with Jackson State willing to lay up to 5 with them. 306-647, 306-648. Texas A&M Commerce plays us to Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and Corpus Christi does find themselves as between 2.5 and 3-point favorites. So your total on this game is 137. Corpus Christi has been a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And I do think that defense going to be taking hold once again. I did set them as a 5-point favorite, going to be willing to lay the number. Corpus Christi, a bottom 40 team in terms of 3-point shooting percentage, but a team that has been able to hold up really well just when the going has gotten tough for them, as they've been able to have some really good rebounding on this team, and they're still a top 125 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, with Gary Clark being their main man down low to be able to give 11.5 points, about 8.5 boards. It's a team that they only shoot about 28.5% from 3-point range, but those 9.5 steals per contest come up big, and with them generating a lot of steals, they also do a solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. Top 125 team in the country with this regard. Meanwhile, Texas A&M Commerce at home is allowing opponents to shoot 39.3% from 3-point range. That's a bottom 75 mark in all of college basketball. With this Commerce team, you just really don't have a lot down low as well. You don't have a single guy on the roster that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, so Corpus Christi going to have a massive advantage here, as Corpus Christi, in terms of their overall rebound rate, they're clocking in 53rd in the country, 356th for Commerce. You do have Kalen Williams along Jerome Brewer. These two guys have been able to do a solid job of both providing about 14 points per contest for the Texas A&M Commerce team. They only turn the ball over about 12.5 times themselves, and hey, I will say, for Commerce, this is a top 100 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so I do think that this is going to be getting a little bit sloppier. That said, it's a Commerce team that's given up at least 69 points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's a Corpus Christi team that they themselves have scored at least 69 in 4 out of their last 5 as well. Now, Corpus Christi, they have not allowed opponents to reach 70 points since their game against New Orleans 5 games ago, and they've allowed north of 70 within the conference just once, but I do think that this is a game that is close enough for late game fouling. I do think that this total is set just a little bit too low, especially with Corpus Christi still being a top 125 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game. We're seeing some 136 half out there. I'm going to be willing to take that over semi-total 137. With Corpus Christi, I do think that they dominate from within to take this game. Willing to lay up to 5 with Corpus Christi to go along with the under. 306, 649, 306, 650. McNeese is going to be playing us in Northwestern St. Northwestern St just find themselves as underdogs of between 20 to 21 points. Totals between 140 and 144.5. I did set Northwestern St as an underdog of 20 points. So now that we're at between 20.5 and 21, I'm going to be willing to take the points. Last time Northwestern St played against McNeese, they actually were able to do an okay job of holding in there. Now, it was just a little bit of a cold night in general for McNeese, but that said, it was a case where Northwestern St was catching just a gob ton of points. They were able to cover that number as McNeese went on the road, won that game 68-59, and it was a day where Northwestern State only shot 34% from the floor and 28% from 3, and yet they still hung in there by 9. They lost the turnover battle 19-15, but you saw some nice notes from this team. You've got Cliff Davis, a main headline scorer for the team, who was able to give you about 15 points on 40% 3-point shooting, and in that game, he went 5 of 10 from 3-point range. The rest of the team, they went a nice hearty 2 of 15 from distance, so they're going to need to get a little bit more out of someone like a Braylon Bush, who's been able to give you about 10 points, 3.5 assists per contest, and this is a Northwestern State team that is certainly going to be getting flattened on the glass. This is a McNeese State team that they've got Christian Schulmate, who's able to give you 12 plus points, 9 plus rebounds per game. If you're looking at overall rebound rate, McNeese is about 138th in all of college basketball, which is solid, and Northwestern State not so solid at 327th. And with this McNeese team, you know that you're going to be able to get good production on shot. Wells had 18 times the first time around, and that's pretty much a season average. 18.5 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists per contest, shooting 42% from 3-point range for a McNeese team that is in the top 30 nationally with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They do shoot 40% from 3-point range, so it's going to be incumbent upon Northwestern State to be able to lock it down from 3-point range. Last time around, this McNeese team, they went 7 of 20 from 3-point range. Northwestern State overall this season in terms of their 3-point shooting defense, about 193rd in the country, but in a roadside shoot-your-core environment. That does go down to 30.7%. I do think that McNeese might be able to knock down a few more threes. You've got a lot of versatility with this team. You've got guys like Antavian Collum, DJ Turn-It-Up Richards, Jahan Garcia. These 3 guys have been able to combine for about 30 to 31 points per contest, and they've been able to get a few guys that were those 2-time transfers back, Mike Saunders being one of them, so they've got a little bit more depth, but I do think that this number is getting just a little bit out of whack. Did set my number at a 20, so being able to get north of 20 with this Northwestern State team, I'm going to be taking a look at the points, and did set my total at 144.5. McNeese is still a bottom 75 team in terms of total possessions per game. Neither team got to 70 the first time around, so going to be taking a look at the under, and I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Northwestern State. 306, 651, 306, 652. It is South Carolina State, and they are going to be on the road taking on Maryland Eastern Shore. Eastern Shore is a favorite of a point. Total on this game between 139.5 and 140.5. With the Shore, I did set them as an underdog of a point and a half. I'm going to be looking at South Carolina State outright on the money line. You are looking at two of the worst teams in all of college basketball, by the way. For South Carolina State and Maryland Eastern Shore, neither of these teams are shooting above 31.3% from three-point range. Both of these teams are turning the ball over north of 13.5 times per contest, and overall from the floor, neither of these teams is shooting above 40.7% from the field. So that's relatively rough, but you do have on both sides one good rebounder. Davion Everett is at for South Carolina State. He's sadly their top scorer with 8.7 points, 6.5 boards per contest. Meanwhile, for Maryland Eastern Shore, Trey Hupstead is probably going to be the best player out there on the floor. 13 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, but for this Maryland Eastern Shore team, the lifeblood of this team last year was generating turnovers. They are just doing absolutely none of that thus far this season. Both of these teams have had a really tough time in terms of being able to guard the three-point arc. Maryland Eastern Shore, they're about 202nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. South Carolina State, they are 293rd in all of college basketball, but I do think that for South Carolina State, they are going to be able to do a little bit of a better job on the inside, as neither of these teams are doing a very good job of being able to hit threes, which means that's going to be coming down to the interior defense. And for Maryland Eastern Shore, 281st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Now, South Carolina State, they're clocking in 353rd in all of college basketball. It is rough on both sides, but when it comes to everyone outside of Troy Hupstead for this Maryland Eastern Shore team, you just have absolutely nothing going for them. Someone like a Chase Davis is able to shoot about 29% from three. It's giving you 8 points per contest, and you've gotten a little bit of something out of Devin Ellis, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. But for Maryland Eastern Shore, in terms of their offensive efficiency, it is the third worst in all of college basketball. Not to say that South Carolina State is doing anything amazing with their offense, but in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, the South Carolina State team has been able to ascend a little bit to 319th. Now, for South Carolina State, this also does decline by about 20 points per 100 possessions when they do leave home, but I've liked what I've seen a little bit more recently out of someone like a Michael Teal, who's been able to give you 7 points, 2.5 assists per contest. Mitchell Taylor has also been able to give you about 2.5 assists per game, so they've got some interchangeable point guards that are going on, and South Carolina State just honestly has been playing the better basketball recently. They have been able to get to at least the 66-point plateau in each of their last 5 games. As a matter of fact, 70 plus in 4 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, Maryland Eastern Shore, they've just been stuck in the mud. They have scored 63 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. The lone exception is when they played against a non-D1 opponent, and 2 of those games went to overtime. Like with Maryland Eastern Shore, even though they are going up against a South Carolina State team that is just so atrocious on defense, I don't know if they're going to be able to capitalize with how bad their offense has been. So it is a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a stab on South Carolina State in recent form on the money line. I set them at a 1.5. I did set my total at 143.5 as well. You've got 2 teams that are playing relatively up-tempo, especially South Carolina State in the top 40 in terms of total possessions per game. You've got 2 atrocious offenses. You've got 2 atrocious defenses. I think that this is close enough for late game filling. And hey, Maryland Eastern Shore, it's already played 2 overtime games in the MEAC. Why not a third? I'm going to be taking a look at South Carolina State outright on the money line, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over as well. 306-653, 306-654. Grambling is going to be playing against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff is an underdog of 6.5 points, totals between 145.5 and 146. Grambling is coming off of giving up 46 points at Mississippi Valley State, and yet this is still one of the worst teams with regards to defensive efficiency in all of college basketball. I did set my total at 147.5. I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. It's a Grambling team that, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, is 234th in all of college basketball. Now, they've got the biggest home and road split that you're going to find in college basketball. They are giving up more than 30 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-neutral court environment. Keep in mind that number is very much warped by going up against Mississippi State over the weekend, and now they go up against a Pine Bluff team that has a pair of guys in Rashad Williams along Kyler Milton. They've been able to combine for 36.5 points, about 6.5 assists per contest, with both shooting north of 37.5% from 3. All in all, Pine Bluff is a top 30 team in all of college basketball, shooting north of 38% from 3-point range. Also with Arkansas Pine Bluff, they're in the bottom 5 in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They are dead last in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 62.8% from 2-point range when they're in a roadside shoot court environment. They're allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range as far this season at a clip that is well north of 35% from 3. So we got their warts as well. But Joe French is a nice number 3 scorer for Pine Bluff, shooting 39.5% from 3, 15 points per contest. And Pine Bluff should be able to do a better job of being able to take care of the ball. They're turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest, despite the fact that they're the more up-tempo team to Grambling's 14 turnovers per game. You've got a Grambling team that really doesn't take the ball away a lot as well. I was expecting a little bit more of Tremichael Morton, who's been able to give you about 9 points per contest, but he's been sort of just stuck with regards to his production over the last few seasons. As a matter of fact, he was averaging more like 3 to 3.5 assists per game 2 to 3 years ago, and that has decreased this season. It's a Grambling team that doesn't have a ton down low. You've been able to have Jonathan Aku along with Antoine Burnett be able to combine for about 12 rebounds per game, and this is a Pine Bluff team that they really don't have a lot outside of Ishmael Plett on the glass. Pine Bluff, they're 361st in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Grambling a little bit better at 312th, but I do think that Pine Bluff going to be able to take advantage of a Grambling team that is certainly allowing it from the outside with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. This is a Grambling team that's clocking in 354th in all of college basketball. I do think that Pine Bluff going to be able to hit some shots, be able to remain lively in a game that I think is going to be much more offensive based than what we saw in Grambling's last time out. So I did set my line at 5.5. Want to take 6+ here with Pine Bluff. Set my total at 147.5. So also looking at the over 306.555, 306.556. It is Texas Southern playing us to Alabama State. Alabama State just find themselves as an underdog of 4 points. Total on this game between 132.5 and 133. And with Texas Southern, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. So here at the 4, I'm going to be taking a look at Alabama State. Alabama State has actually been able to do a halfway decent job with their defense, 107th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, going up against a Texas Southern team that traditionally, they're a pretty good team with regards to being up at the glass. They're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. They're 180th with regards to their overall opponent's three-point shooting percentage as well. And for Texas Southern, this is one of the worst offenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are well outside the top 330. They are 345th to be exact. Now, I will say this for Texas Southern, they are generating about 18.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. But I sort of like the vibe that's going on with Alabama State because it's a father-son duo. You've got TJ Madlock and his father, Tony Madlock, doing a good job leading this program in the right direction. It is an Alabama State team that's 337th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're actually scoring 11.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. You've been able to have Madlock, who I was mentioning, give you about 15.5 points, 2 steals per contest, and this is an Alabama State team that is a top 100 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They don't really shoot it well from three-point range, but do have one guy in CJ Hines who's stroking it at nearly 40% from distance. You've been able to get a little bit of rebounding down low out of Micah Octave, about 4.5 points, 4.5 boards. He's a guy that has really been able to rise up recently, being able to give the team a combined 21 rebounds in the last 2 games, a pair of blocks as well. So I like the way that he is coming to the forefront for this team for Texas Southern. It's all about Jonathan Cisse and PJ Henry. They've been able to combine for about 23.5 points per contest, and Cisse is not shooting about 39.5% from three-point range. But for Texas Southern, the main rebounders that you typically have on this team, they're just not there. They don't have a single guy that's logging north of 5 rebounds per game. Grayson Carter has been your main man, comes in from UTSA, coupled with UT Arlington as well. He's been able to give you about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game. And Deion Stroud, who came in from Fresno State, I remember he was a double-figure scorer for them many years ago. Only about 5 points per contest. He's been a disappointment. So I do think that Alabama State is going to be able to hold up in a game that I think is going to be quite defense-oriented. I feel like we've won a little bit too low here. Alabama State is a top 125 team with regards to total possessions per game, and Alabama State is out cooking with some gas with their offense as well. This team has been able to get to at least 70 points in 3 of their last 5 games, and this is a Texas Southern team that they themselves have broken the 70-point plateau in 3 of their last 4 games. So it is a spot where I set my total 134.5, looking over, and I'm willing to take 3+ here with Alabama State, 306-657, 306-658. You've got Southern playing us to Mississippi Valley State. Valley State is an underdog of 19 to 19.5 points. Your total on this game is 132 to 132.5. I had to set my total at a 130. I'm looking at the under just because flat out I don't know if this Mississippi Valley State team gets to 50. I wish I could put it any other way, but Mississippi Valley State, to put it bluntly, how bad this offense is in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they are scoring 77 points per 100 possessions. The next worst offense in college basketball is Coppin St. They're averaging 79.7 points per 100 possessions, so a full 2.7 points more per 100 possessions. Nobody else in college basketball is averaging fewer than 9.1 points fewer per 100 possessions than them. They are 9.1 points clear. Coppin St and Mississippi Valley State is of everyone else in college basketball. I mean, it's a skid mark on the underpants of college basketball. And when they hit the road, they're averaging 73.2 points per 100 possessions. I mean, good grief. Can they find a little bit of offense? You've got Raekwon Brown, who's been able to give you about 17 points, 6.5 boards per contest, but you literally have 3 guys on the roster averaging north of 4.5 points and north of 2.3 rebounds per game. You've been able to get a little bit of help out of Recco Gibson, along Donovan Sanders. They're combining for about 20.5 points, 7.5 boards, and Gibson is actually shooting 57% for 3, but this team is turning the ball over 17 times per game. That's almost the same amount of field goals that they're making per game, going up against a Southern team that they're generating north of 10 steals per contest. Each of your top 4 scorers generate at least 1 steal per game, including Tayron Joseph, who's been your main scorer, 21 points, right around 1.7 assists per contest. And then the gentleman from France, Tijande Diobasi, has been able to give you about 4.5 assists, right around 9 points per contest. This is a Southern team that they really don't have anything down low. They're a bottom 50 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but you know what? Mississippi Valley State, they don't hit the glass either, as currently they are 349th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. They are not defending. They are outside the bottom 25 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, having given up at least 80 in 3 out of their last 4 games. So I think that Southern could very easily be able to get to 80 in this spot. As a matter of fact, they've scored 74 plus in 4 of their last 5 games, but I just want to have confidence that Mississippi Valley State gets to 50 here. I set my line at 22. I'm laying it with Southern, and I'm looking at this total under. I set my total at 130. 306, 659, 306, 660. You've got Bethune-Cookman playing against Alcorn State, and Alcorn State is an underdog of 2.5 points. Total on this game is 152.5 with Bethune-Cookman. I did set them as a favorite of 3 points. So you're at the 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's a Bethune-Cookman team that has been able to generate a lot of turnovers. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, it's a top 25 team in all of college basketball. It just blows my mind that Devontae McIntyre is right now averaging 2.9 points and 2.6 steals per contest. I've never seen a split like that, but each of your top 4 scorers for this Bethune-Cookman team has been able to generate at least a steal per contest. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Zion Harmon. He returned on Saturday to 23.6 assists, so it looks like he is better than ever. And then you've been able to have the duo of Deshaun Dyson along Jacoby Heedy, who have been able to combine for about 30.5 points per contest. It's not a good shooting team. They only shoot about 30.3% from 3-point range, but this is an Alcorn State team that's almighty bad on defense. Alcorn State outside the top 350 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, 357th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Now, for Alcorn State, they probably are going to be able to win the battle down low, and that's because you've got Jeremiah Kendall, who's able to give you about 15.5 points, 7 boards, and for Alcorn State, they've got some nice pieces. Jeremiah Gambrell, along with Byron Joshua, combined for 24 points, and Gambrell shoots about 42.5% from 3-point range, and this is a Bethune-Cookman team that they are going to give it up from the outside as well. They gamble for turnovers, so they leave themselves very prone to teams being able to shoot it from the outside, and as a matter of fact, for Bethune-Cookman at home, opponents are shooting 39.4% from 3-point range, so I do think that you're going to have a lot of made shots in this one, but this is an Alcorn State team that has been looking to play a little bit slower here in conference play. Not to say that they have been any sort of a just tremendous defense in general, but this is an Alcorn State team that now in terms of points allowed, they have given up 72 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. A lot of that has been due to their tempo going a little bit more slow, and this is a Bethune-Cookman team that they themselves in regulation, because the game that they played against Southern, that went to overtime, they've now given up 71 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. These are a pair of teams that they've been able to straighten out a little bit more with their defense in conference. So I did set my total at a 147. You've got a pair of teams that they really just don't shoot it amazing from 3-point range. So we're going to have the under, and with Bethune-Cookman, made them 3-point favorites, so we'll lay up to 2.5 with them. We wrap things up with 3 of 661, 3 of 662. Prairie View is going to be playing against Alabama A&M. A&M is an underdog of 7 to 7.5 points on the road. Totals between 147 and 146.5. Did set my total at 146. So here at a 147, 147.5, I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. It's an Alabama A&M team that is just very top heavy. Like what I'm seeing out of Dallin Smith, he's been able to supply the team with about 14 points, a little bit over a steal per contest for an Alabama A&M team that they don't have a single guy in the roster that's averaging more than 3.6 rebounds per game. They shoot 29% from 3-point range, and they're a bottom 20 team in the country with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. And for Alabama A&M, they are 329th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But I mean, at home, they're actually a halfway functional offense in a road field/neutral court environment, their scoring drops by about 14.1 points per 100 possessions, going up against a Prairie View team that they are always going to gamble for turnovers, and they've been able to do a relatively okay job of it here. It's an Alabama A&M team that is actually, in their own right, about 84th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but with Prairie View, you've got a lot of active hands. They are 10th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. And as a matter of fact, they're generating a turnover on 27% of possessions at home. Only Houston has a better turnovers per possession ratio at home this season, with Prairie View being led by a pair of guys in Charles Smith IV, along Javante Hawkins, who have transferred in, combined for 26 points per contest. Smith is shooting about 35% from 3-point range. Each of your top 3 scorers give you at least 1.3 steals per game. And for Prairie View, it's not great, but you know what? They're not turning the ball over a ton. 12.9 turnovers per game. They've been able to get a little bit more down low out of Brian Miles. You know that Prairie View is never going to be a really good rebound rate team, but for Alabama A&M, they just don't have a lot of rebounding either. 293rd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. So Prairie View, their Achilles heel, being 359th with regards to rebound rate, not going to be unearthed too much. And you've got really good balance with regards to this Prairie View team. You've got 7 different guys that give you at least 7.8 points per contest. I do think that that's going to be just enough for them to be able to get it done and be able to cover this game. I set my number at 8, so going to be willing to lay the 7 with Prairie View, and did set my total out of 146. I think that there's just going to be a ton of dead possessions by Prairie View being able to generate turnovers. So looking at the under and looking at Prairie View laying the number, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, part of the VSiN family and podcast. A big thanks to Tristan Freeman of Boston Brackets for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways to be able to listen. First one is my Twitter /X timeline, @_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, maybe does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season with me coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.